The quiet revolution, when your growth threatens their comfort. Ever noticed how people shift when you truly begin to change? They may not say it openly. Instead, they'll laugh nervously, offer advice dressed as concern, or go quiet when you speak from the depths. Why? Because your transformation highlights what they've chosen to ignore. When you align with growth and inner power, your presence alone unsettles their inertia. They're not angry at you, they're threatened. Your progress is a mirror to their complacency, and most can't stand their own reflection. Maybe this is where you are now. You no longer think like you used to. You act with intention. You question beliefs you once followed blindly. And suddenly you feel alone, misunderstood, even judged. But this isolation is not exile, it is initiation. To forge a mind so unshakable, so free it unsettles others, you must pass through this fire. And not just any strength, but the kind that breathes, resists, and refuses to yield. Mental rebellion, a threat to the average. Why does this happen? Because a truly sovereign mind threatens collective comfort. When you dare to think independently, destroy illusions and create your own compass, you become dangerous, not only to society, not only to others, but to the older version of yourself. This is not a path for those who crave comfort or crave applause. It's for you, the one burdened by quiet doubts, teetering at the edge of collapse, yearning to tear down what's false and build something that cannot be broken. A mind that resists influence, a soul that never kneels. If you're ready for that kind of journey, cold, raw, transformative, stay. Nietzsche won't comfort you, he'll confront you. But if you endure it, you will never see yourself or the world the same again. Nietzsche, surgeon of the inner world. Nietzsche was not a philosopher in the usual sense. He was a surgeon of the soul. He didn't fear the abyss. He walked into it, dissected it, and returned with tools for transformation. He understood one thing most cannot accept. Order does not forge greatness. Chaos does. He wrote, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." This isn't poetic fluff. It's psychological reality. To build a mind that cannot be broken, you must discard the fantasy that strength comes from ease. It comes from facing pain and refusing to run. It comes from no longer begging for a lighter load, and instead building stronger shoulders. Ask yourself, when did you grow the most? In the calm, or in the wreckage, lost, stripped bare, and forced to rebuild from nothing? Nietzsche knew, suffering is not a detour, it is the fuel. Tempering the unbreakable spirit. Nietzsche never romanticized pain, he saw it as the forge. Change your relationship with suffering, with loss, with solitude, and you begin to craft something rare, an unbreakable will. Most people flee from disorder. You will learn to walk through it. Where others cling to comfort, you will build magnificence. But this metamorphosis is violent. It tears away every false belief you were handed about what strength is. Strength is not plastering on a smile. Strength is surviving what should have destroyed you, and becoming sharper, more dangerous, more fully alive because of it. The need for an inner anchor. But Nietzsche also knew that chaos without direction becomes destruction. If there is no anchor within, no center of gravity forged in solitude and brutal honesty, the same storm that shapes you can consume you. And this is where we enter the most pivotal truth in Nietzsche's entire vision. Not just that God is dead, but that your inner sovereignty must rise in his absence. Radical responsibility, the death of the divine excuse. When there is no longer a sky to whisper meaning into your life, the responsibility for creation falls to you. Nietzsche's pronouncement that God is dead wasn't triumph. It was a wake-up call. He wasn't celebrating the collapse of religion. He was stripping away the final illusion. The illusion that someone is watching, that someone has a plan, that pain has a prepackaged purpose. With the death of God comes the death of excuses. It is no longer acceptable to hand off responsibility to fate, to tradition, or to invisible forces. And that's terrifying, because now, there is no savior, no manual, no divine author to blame, only you, standing alone in the chaos. But those who can remain upright in this moment, who don't collapse, begin to forge something extraordinary, a consciousness that answers to no one but itself. Birth of brutal autonomy. Nietzsche casts you into the wilderness of absolute freedom. You must not obey. You must transcend. You must not conform. You must create. It is the birth of brutal autonomy, and it comes at a price. Everything now depends on you. No more commandments, no salvation, no forgiveness written in the stars. Either you rise, or you disappear. The fire within, where power begins. But hidden within that void and that terror is the key to your deepest power. When you stop waiting to be rescued, something ancient stirs within you, a quiet blaze that refuses to go out. It will force you to act, not because it is expected, but because it is true. And in the wreckage of borrowed beliefs, something new begins to emerge. A higher version of yourself. The rise of the Übermensch. Not a superhero, not a myth, but a human being who dares to live beyond the herd. The Übermensch, the Overman, is born in the vacuum where God once ruled. A being who does not seek permission to exist, who creates morality instead of inheriting it, who walks freely, with chains shattered behind him. This person is feared, not because of violence, but because of what they represent, a confrontation with truth. The Übermensch is a mirror too clear for most to face. And if you want to become unbreakable, you must walk this path, beyond obedience, beyond dogma, guided by your own will to power. The blueprint of the Übermensch, creative destruction. Let's go deeper. Nietzsche never saw evolution as gentle or passive. For him, real growth was born in rupture, through upheaval, through creative destruction. That's why he envisioned the Übermensch, not a hero in a cape, not a figure of fantasy, but someone who has conquered the invisible chains that bind ordinary men: guilt, obedience, the craving to belong, the fear of standing alone. The Übermensch doesn't beg to be liked, doesn't wait for permission. He writes his own commandments and lives by them, even if it means standing alone against the world. Because his foundation isn't built on the shifting sands of public opinion, his mind becomes indestructible, self-sufficient, fueled by his own will to power, the primal urge to shape life, not be shaped by it. Imposing meaning on the world. Here's the crucial distinction. The Übermensch doesn't conform to the world. He confronts it. He does not ask, "Is this allowed?" He asks, "Is this worthy of me?" That question changes everything. When you see yourself not as a servant of systems, but as their author, your thoughts, your decisions, your life, all transform, the price of becoming. But make no mistake, to become this kind of being demands a violent shedding of skin. You will have to kill parts of yourself still clinging to validation. You will face the pain of exile, not from a place, but from the comfort of conformity. You will have to carve a new self from the ground up, without applause, without guidance, without mercy. And most people, they run, back into the warm arms of doctrine, back into the crowd, back into the illusions they once begged to escape. The road to the Übermensch is narrow and brutal. Nietzsche walked it, misunderstood, mocked, alone. But it was in that solitude that he touched true freedom. The solitude that separates the strong. Here's something you must come to terms with. The more powerful your mind becomes, the further it drifts from the crowd. The higher you rise, the more you unsettle. Becoming the Übermensch is not a feel-good transformation. It is the fiercest of metamorphoses, a tearing down of all that was imposed upon you by a world that despises individuality and rewards obedience. Only after complete destruction can something authentic be constructed. But that construction happens far from the noise. It happens in silence, in isolation, in that sacred solitude where the weak fall away and the strong are forged. This is why the next stage of your journey is the one most neglected, the solitude of the strong. Because here's the hard truth. If you want to be unbreakable, you must learn how to walk alone. And most people will never be ready for that. In that desert, there are no fans, no praise, no mentors. There is only you, your wounds, your doubts, your shadows, and the temptation to turn back. This is where the real test begins. Most, when faced with this silence, will flee. They'll retreat behind masks. They'll pretend not to feel, not to think, not to see. But you, if you truly aim to become unshakable, must stay. You must endure the silence that exposes your truth. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual must always struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will often be lonely and sometimes frightened, but no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." And that is the essence, to truly possess yourself. Because once you do, no one can manipulate you. No one can diminish you. No one can shake your foundation. But that possession comes at a cost. Loneliness. You'll lose people. You'll be judged, mislabeled, misunderstood. They will call you arrogant, distant, cold. Why? Because you refuse to be domesticated. Because you stopped reflecting their needs and started radiating your truth. The raw truth. Freedom demands solitude. Here's the unfiltered reality. If you can't stomach solitude, you're not ready for real freedom. Because every form of true liberation requires abandonment, of emotional safety nets, of comforting delusions, of relationships that only survive in mediocrity. This is why Nietzsche saw solitude not as a prison, but as the battleground where the authentic self finally awakens. In solitude, the elevated spirit doesn't just walk alone, it begins to perceive what others can't. The inevitable collision with mediocrity. And when that vision sharpens, there's a new enemy on the horizon: collective mediocrity. Because once you begin to strengthen, mediocrity senses the tremor, and it resists. Nietzsche didn't fear tyrants or kings. He feared the invisible tyranny of conformity, the subtle pressure to remain small so others don't feel the need to grow. When your mind sharpens and your spirit expands, you disrupt not by action, but by existence. You break the mold, and society despises those who do. Why? Because your light exposes their shadows. Nietzsche called this slave morality, the twisted code built by those who failed to rise and instead flipped virtue upside down. Strength becomes arrogance. Ambition becomes selfishness. Independence becomes emotional coldness. This morality doesn't defend the weak from cruelty. It resents the strong for shining. It doesn't want redemption. It wants destruction. Because in your awakening, you remind them that they too had a choice and chose comfort over truth. The resistance against awakening. And this is why, the moment you begin to liberate yourself, the resistance begins. Sometimes it's loud, criticism, rejection, confrontation. Sometimes it's subtle, a glance, an uncomfortable silence, a sarcastic remark. But the message behind all of it is the same. Go back. Make us comfortable again. Here's the tragedy. You are not attacking anyone. You are simply being yourself. But your mere existence, untamed and honest, makes others confront the illusions they've built their lives upon. The weapons of mental war mediocrity rarely comes with force. It attacks with numbers, with consensus, with repetition. It whispers doubt into your mind. It questions your path, not because you're wrong, but because you're different. It cloaks shame in concern. It makes exclusion feel like justice. And this is where many collapse. They fear the labels: strange, arrogant, intense. They fear being alone. But Nietzsche wouldn't call you arrogant. He'd call you essential. Because it is the rare individual, the one who dares to break patterns, who creates the friction that leads to evolution. Your uniqueness is not the problem. It is the ignition of change. The mental arsenal, choosing to live freely, to think dangerously, to act with integrity. This is mental warfare, and no war is won unarmed. You will need weapons, not of steel, but of spirit. Unshakable clarity. Endurance when no one is watching. Fierce independence of thought. Raw, unapologetic authenticity. Vision that sees beyond conformity. This is your arsenal. Use it well. The cost and the reward. There's a steep cost to forging a mind that others fear. You will lose the shallow connections that thrived on your silence. You will lose the opportunities that required obedience. You will lose the comfort of fitting in. But you will gain integrity that no one can buy, clarity that no lie can distort, presence that speaks even in your silence. You'll begin to see the world sleepwalking, and your awareness will become a threat. People will tremble not at your voice but at your gaze. Your absence will echo louder than others' presence, and none of this will be gifted to you. It will be earned in solitude, in discipline, in the dark hours no one applauds. You will wage war within every single day between the person you were and the one you are becoming. And that war never ends. The earthquake within. The truly powerful do not rest because they've won. They endure because they've awakened. Nietzsche did not want obedient followers. He wanted to rattle your very core. He wanted you to stop chasing validation, to stop asking for meaning from systems built to enslave you, to build with blood and vision what no dogma can provide. He wanted you to become dangerous, not with violence but with presence, the kind of presence that forces the world to look in the mirror, the kind of mind that wakes others from their sleep. The call to action. If any part of this struck a chord within you, don't let it pass. Let it change you. Write down in the comments. A truth you're tired of hiding. A belief you're afraid to share. A thought that isolates you but defines you. This is how it begins. Claim your voice. Declare your presence. Announce that you will no longer bend. Because if you've made it this far, you're not here by accident. You're not just watching. Something inside you has already shifted. Keep going. You are not lost. You are simply ahead. And yes, that is terrifying. But it's also the first taste of liberation.